Someone is standing at a stove, stirring a pot of simmering curry. A small spoon dips into a jar of orange-yellow powder and taps it into the pan. The color spreads instantly, turning the whole dish a deep golden hue. It's a scene that plays out in millions of kitchens every single day. Turmeric. Most people know it as the spice that makes curry yellow, or the thing that stains your cutting board if you're not careful. But that yellow powder is doing something most people never think about. Buried inside those small particles is a group of compounds that scientists have spent decades studying. Compounds that interact with the human body in ways far more complex than adding flavor. So what actually happens after that spoonful lands in your food, gets eaten, and disappears into your body? The answer involves your gut, your liver, your bloodstream, and a molecule that turns out to be surprisingly stubborn. Let's start with the compound at the center of it all, curcumin. Curcumin is one of several natural pigments found in turmeric root, and it's the main reason turmeric looks the way it does. Think of turmeric powder as a mixture, mostly starch and fiber, but laced with a small percentage of these active plant compounds. Curcumin is the headline act, and it's been the subject of thousands of scientific papers exploring how it behaves once it's inside a living organism. Here's where the story gets interesting and where a lot of popular claims about turmeric start to go wrong. When you eat turmeric, curcumin doesn't just flood into your bloodstream and start working on every organ in your body. In fact, one of the most consistent findings in curcumin research is that it has notably low bioavailability. That's a science word for a simple idea. Very little of it actually makes it from your gut into your blood in an active form. Picture curcumin as a guest trying to get into an exclusive building. It has to survive the acidic environment of your stomach, get processed by digestive enzymes, pass through the wall of your intestine, and then run a gauntlet in your liver, where enzymes rapidly break it down and prepare it for elimination. Most of it never makes the trip intact. A lot of it exits the body relatively quickly, transformed into different compounds along the way. This single fact, low bioavailability, is central to understanding why turmeric research is so much more complicated than headlines suggest. Now, despite that absorption challenge, researchers remain genuinely curious about curcumin because laboratory studies have shown it interacting with several biological pathways involved in inflammation and oxidative stress. In plain terms, inside cells, there are signaling systems that act like communication networks, telling the immune system when to ramp up a defensive response. In test tube and animal studies, curcumin has been shown to influence some of these signaling messengers. This is exactly the kind of quick pause worth taking. If you're the type who finds it fascinating that an everyday spice can nudge cellular communication systems, this is a good moment to hit subscribe, because this channel digs into exactly this kind of hidden science hiding in ordinary food. Human research tells a more nuanced story than the lab studies alone. Some clinical trials in humans have examined curcumin, often in concentrated supplement form, for things like joint discomfort, markers of oxidative stress, and certain cardiometabolic measurements such as cholesterol or blood sugar markers. Some of these trials have reported modest improvements. Others have found no meaningful effect. Systematic reviews looking across many of these studies frequently point out that the research is inconsistent, that many trials are small, and that study designs vary widely. Some researchers have also raised concerns that curcumin behaves in ways that can produce misleading results in certain laboratory assays, which adds another layer of complexity to interpreting the data. In other words, this isn't a closed case with a triumphant conclusion. It's an active, unresolved area of science. There's also research into whether curcumin might interact with processes relevant to brain health, but this area remains largely early stage, built mostly on laboratory and animal studies rather than strong human clinical evidence. It's a compound generating real scientific interest, not a proven treatment for any disease, which brings us to the absorption problem again, because science has actually found one practical workaround. Black pepper contains a compound called piperine, and multiple studies have found that piperine can meaningfully increase how much curcumin the body absorbs. It appears to slow down some of the processes that normally break curcumin down before it can be used. This is part of why you'll sometimes see turmeric and black pepper paired together, both in traditional cooking and in some commercial supplements. But here's the important distinction. Sprinkling black pepper into your curry is not the same experiment as the concentrated, standardized capsules used in clinical trials. Supplement level doses of curcumin, especially formulated for higher absorption, can behave very differently in the body than the small amount of turmeric in a home cooked meal. And those concentrated forms have also been studied for potential interactions with certain medications, including blood thinners. That's a conversation for a doctor or pharmacist, not a spice rack. This is really the heart of the whole story. Turmeric is a food. It contains genuinely interesting biologically active compounds. But eating turmeric in your dinner is a completely different biological event than taking a clinical grade curcumin supplement. One is part of a meal. The other is a concentrated intervention being studied in controlled conditions. Confusing the two is where most turmeric myths come from. None of that makes turmeric boring, though. If anything, it makes it more interesting to actually use.